traffic jam is on now.
Hi, and welcome to Traffic Jam. It's me, Miss B, your host for today. I'm so excited to be here and have an opportunity to speak with the legendary Kim Osorio. She's from the Bronx, New York. Shit happens. That's what I'm talking about. Hello, Kim. Welcome. How are you today?
Hi, what's up, Miss B? I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, we are excited to have you. Lots of great things going on. We are coming together now a couple of days after we have our first female vice president. And one time for the ladies, yes. Now, tell us how you feel about having a female brown vice president.
I gave my applause, right? Okay.
Yes. How do you think that will change the face of America?
Well, first of all, she's gonna, she's going to get it together.
Yeah.
We needed a woman in there. It was time.
Yeah, they needed some straightening up.
Yes, exactly. But I think when you think about how hard it has to be to get to that position, right? I mean,
yes.
That office. And then you look at someone like Kamala Harris and see, just how much she's accomplished and just how great she is. It's like, you've got to be exceptional as a woman to get there. So you already know she's like 100 times more qualified than she needs to be.
Right off the bat. Right off the bat.
You already know.
Yes, without a doubt. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see what her being there will do for women and for minorities and for everybody.
You're watching the Traffic Jam.
and just like you, she worked hard to get to where she is. And so let everybody know about you and where you've come from.
Well, I mean, it's been a journey. I was going to say a long journey, but I don't, I'm still on that journey. And like you said, I came from the Bronx, grew up in the Castle Hill section. And from there, I went on to go to Fordham University. And then I don't know if a lot of people know, I try to talk about it as much as possible because I got to get some mileage out of my law degree. So I went to law school right after college because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I always had a passion for music and wanted to get my foot in the door of the music industry, but discovered writing and became a writer for the Source magazine and other publications. But, people know me primarily from the Source magazine and got into telling stories, transitioned to television after the Source and started working as a producer. I mean, I'm skipping over a lot.
Yes,
but
you are.
I am giving the abbreviated version of my professional journey. So it's been very rewarding for me just because I've been able to work and do something that I love.
Growing up, did you ever think about, I want to be a lawyer?
Oh yeah. I say this a lot in interviews. Yeah. My parents, they weren't college educated. My father, they were both from East Harlem. And to them, I think success for me was getting to college and, finding a profession that they believed was successful. Being a lawyer or a doctor, my sister's actually a nurse practitioner. That was like big success, right?
Big success.
Right. So that was it. And that was the track I was on. After I graduated from school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. it was like, I guess I'm going to go to law school. So at the time, I didn't realize, you know, what I was going to be doing professionally. I didn't realize that you could find a career path with something that you really loved. I just thought I was doing what I was supposed to do. And I thought in my head, like, you're going to be a lawyer. I've since thought about it a lot more because I have much more passion for the legal system now than I did when I went to law school. So I've actually thought, well, maybe, you know, you'll go and take the bar, pass it, you know, and practice, because writing is a big part of being a lawyer. So
the research, the writing, the communication, all of those things play in together for what you eventually ended up doing anyway.
Right. And so I think, and the research is probably the biggest thing, right? So as a journalist, I feel like being in law school really pushed me to research heavy into everything that I was doing. So even now today, you know, I'm working in the reality television space, and I'm always digging. Sometimes, you know, more than they may want me to dig. I'm trying to get to the real story. I was just talking about this yesterday. We were talking about whether our audience still has the appetite for, you know, a lot of the stuff we see on reality TV. And I said our audience will always have the appetite if we're giving the real story.
You're watching The Traffic Jam.
Since 2016 now, you have been working in the reality shows, but you started out on a reality show.
I did.
Tell us how that happened.
You know, that was when I was working at the Source. So I was working at the Source, and the idea at the time, you know, when they were really starting to explore women's stories, and on VH1, because it was a VH1 show, they approached me for a show about women in media, and pitched that show, and we got picked up. And I did the show. It was only one season, but I was, you know, on a cast of what I consider to be some amazing women in media, some who are still my friends to this day.
That's good.
It was the Gossip Game. I didn't even say the name, right? Gossip Game. Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's pretty cool. And, you know, like you say, you and I have like a 20-year age separation. All right. So I can remember 20 years ago, or even beyond that, probably with you growing up, what hip hop was in your life. It was new. It was exciting.
Yes.
You know, like Biggie says, who knows that, hip hop, they would take it this far.
Right.
And look at what it is today and turning into reality shows. So when you're doing a reality show, how much of it is real and how much of it is scripted? Exciting. How many fights are real?
What's up? It's your boy, comedian A.G. White, not so white, not white now, and you are watching The Traffic Jam. Jam.
So, I say everything is real.
Okay.
Right? Because most of the stuff that I work on that may have been, I don't know, concocted, doesn't make the cut.
Wow.
You know, doesn't make the cut because, to be honest, a lot of people on reality TV aren't that good at acting. So most of it is real. What we do is script scenarios sometimes, but what I do, the scenarios are based on insight that we're getting. So real life stories. And, you know, it's tough because people, although they sign up to do these shows, they do not want to reveal the most sacred parts of them. For the most part, there are some people who say,
Let
They
it
don't
rip.
ask me what's going on. They're like, I'm going to get in the scene and I'm just going to be me. I think that's the best way to approach it.
Yes.
Most reality show cast members try to control their own narrative and try to put on their producer hat and spin the story the way they want to.
Mhm.
But I think ultimately the best television is kind of going along the journey with people as they're faced with certain challenges in their life. If you want to talk about the fighting, I think the camera amplifies it because they know that people are watching, so they want to make sure they don't look a certain way. So they react maybe a lot differently when that camera light is on. I think that it's a little bit of maybe exaggeration, I think sometimes, but a lot of times when you see those fights that you remember and you talk about and you're like, did you see when this happened on that? Most of the time that's very real. It's very real. And that's what makes people talk about it. Those real reactions. Some people feel like they've been pushed to their limit and they just end up going there because they think that that's going to get them the most visibility.
Yeah.
And so maybe they're fighting for no reason, or no reason that what I would believe is a reason. I can't say, what other people's sort of limits are. It's real to me. I'm in there a lot. So working in the field, and it's very real to me because I'm there. And a lot of times we have to diffuse these situations so that it won't get physical. We don't want that to happen on set. I don't want anyone on my set. I don't want anybody to get hurt. I just don't.
I know.
I want excitement. I want great television, but I'm not there to hurt anyone or to see anyone get hurt or to get hurt myself. I've stepped in the middle. You're not supposed to do that as a producer. You know what I mean?
Never. And you should have known that. Coming from the Bronx, you don't never step in. You let them duke it out.
Security tells me all the time. They're like, do not go, in. But it's tough when you're dealing with real emotions.
Yes. Now, tell us the shows that you've worked on. I know, but give us the rundown of all of the love and hip hops and everything else that you've either been a producer on or the executive producer.
I right now I'm out in LA. I'm working on season 6 of Growing Up Hip Hop, and it is based out here. The franchise has shows in Atlanta and New York, but we're out here in LA finishing this up. So that probably will air in May. I don't want to say the date because I'm not sure, but around that time. Nothing is concrete. Before this, did season 10 of Love and Hip Hop New York. And so as a showrunner there, an executive producer. So that was a long run, I think, because, Love and Hip Hop is on for each season for, it was like a 20 episode order. We didn't obviously go the full run because of the pandemic. So cameras went down.
Yeah.
I'm sure people are still waiting to see what happened that season. So that was, that was also something that I did recently. I think before that, I've done Black Ink Chicago. I did a show on BET, Hustle in Brooklyn. One of my favorites. I love working with first season cast. And I did Growing Up Hip Hop New York, and I've worked on Hustle and Soul, which was a show about a restaurant in Brooklyn.
What is a day in the life of an executive producer? Well, how do you get to be an executive producer of a show? What does that entail? And then what do you have to really do?
Yeah, there are different types of executive producers on shows, right? Like you see when the credits roll. Hold on one second. I'm so
I'm
sorry.
right here.
But
It's
my
okay.
dog
You're
is doing
good.
up a very important paperwork that I need to travel with her. So there we go.
Okay. All right.
So
And see,
she would,
that's the day of that's part of the life of an executive producer, right there.
yeah, I travel with my dog. But she was ripping up the health records. I will leave your little butt in LA when I fly because you need that to get on the plane. So some executive producers don't have to do much. Maybe they sold the show, maybe they created the show. And when those credits roll at the beginning of the show, you see the executive producers and you're like, why are there 10 executive producers on this show? So different executive producers wear different hats. For me, show running is part of being in the actual field while we're filming the show. So running that part of the show. And it involves a lot of storytelling, really digging in and finding out what these stories are, building the show, building the episodes, hiring the team that works on the show, working with, my field crew, working with my post crew, so that once we film the show and film the scenes, they go back to, the editing bay and we figure out what's going to make it, put the show together, figure out what is going to be our trajectory for the season, work with the network on that. There are a lot of hands on these shows. So there are a lot of executive producers on a lot of the shows that I work on. It's my role is primarily kind of putting the show together once they bring me on board and working with a team to get really great content.
You're watching The Traffic Jam.
All right, so let's talk about the importance of stretching. So you want to make sure that you are stretching before and after you do any sort of exercise. Stretching is also really good to do on your active recovery or rest days. So there's two main types of stretching. There's going to be a dynamic stretch, which is going to be stretching while in movement essentially, and then static stretching. So typically you're going to want to do some sort of dynamic warm-up, dynamic stretches before starting your workout. You're holding these stretches for about 10 seconds at most. And again, doing them while in movement. Examples of this would be maybe a reach and swoop. Okay. And then there are static stretchers. These are the type of stretches that we all did back in PE, where you're sitting, you're reaching for your toes, or you are, grabbing your foot, doing a quad stretch. These are stretches that are something that you're going to want to hold for about 30 seconds to a minute to really help those length tension relationships in your body. Now, the reason why you don't want to stretch too long before you work out is because you're lengthening out those muscles, which means that then when you go to be active, you might put yourself at risk of straining something or pulling something because the muscles aren't ready to have that fast reaction to produce that power or to generate that movement that you want. So it's much better to stretch your muscles within the range of movement that you plan to do for your exercise and to not hold it too long. But once we're done exercising and we've now cooled down, this is a good opportunity to lengthen out those shortened muscles that happen while we were exercising. So that's just a little bit about the different types of stretching, why you need to stretch. And again, it's super important just to make sure that your body is working right, to make sure that your bones are in alignment, that your muscles are working in their most functional capacity. So even if you think you might not need to, or if you feel like you're very flexible, I still encourage you to go ahead and stretch because you never know what is tight or taut. There's definitely differences between that too, and I'm happy to go through that in more depth if you want to message me for more questions. But that's just a quick overview of stretching and why it is so important.
You're watching The Traffic Jam.
Now, you chose a field that is predominantly male, that's extremely sexist, that is not necessarily kind to minorities. And so what has your experience been as a woman around, folks that are not necessarily kind to women?
Oh, you mean like what's it like to live in America? That's my everyday struggle. So when I go to work, I'm like, it's just work.
It's
It is what
just,
it is, you
um,
know.
who have you had to put in their place and get straight? You know,
Oh
who
gosh.
have you had to man up to in order to let them know that you're the executive producer and not to be played with?
You know, I want to be in situations and in working environments where I enjoy the people that I work with. And we come out of, I have some of my best friends are people who I worked on jobs with. And I love that because that's how I get other jobs, right? So, like,
Right.
that's how I get other checks. Like, we look out for each other. And I realize the value in that. So, when I come on a job, I always look at it, especially doing, this as, I loan out my services as a production company to different companies and networks. To me, the best result is always to be finished with the show and to carry those relationships to the next show.
Yeah.
Just like any business, I think, right? These relationships and the way that you manage people is probably the most important thing. I try to stress that to my kids. Like, my daughter's in college now and she's studying all these things and she's so excited about being there. And I love hearing about it. But in the back of my mind, there's that piece that's like, none of the stuff that you're learning in class really matters. I hope you're being nice to people.
Because that's what lasts, their impression of you
Right.
upon making contact with you.
Right.
And their interaction with you. That's what matters. So who have you had the most fun with? What is the most memorable, some of them, because I know there's multiple, memorable times you've had with artists and actors who we know and love?
It's such an interesting question. So when I think about going back to my days at the source, right?
Yeah.
I will say that was probably the most fun I've ever had on a job. Working at the source, working with the people I worked with at the source. It was a great time. And I I formed a lot of relationships back then that I still hold very dear to me today. So who have I worked with that I love working with? Like, just in the back of my mind, I just did Love and Hip Hop New York. I love working with Yandy. I think she's amazing. I love seeing what she's doing, just as an activist in the space. When the show was not on, all the work that she was doing. And so to me, that there's so much value in that, right?
Yes.
And I've worked on different shows that I've been able to say, hey, this is, a great relationship, and throw other opportunities to people. So I've always kind of taken relationships out of my experience, and sometimes they come to help, me in my career. So, I always talk about Kanye West and how much I feel like he's helped me throughout my career, right? So, like, I'm very supportive of Kanye and I've worked with him on different things, so that goes all the way back to my days at the source, right? Like, it's like recognizing that talent back then and being able to say, hey, this is, this music is great. I think this artist is going to do well in maintaining that relationship.
You knew him when? You knew him before we knew him.
Yeah. And I think, the confidence that he had even back then, right? Where some people may have said, okay, this producer's good, but didn't necessarily see the vision of who that person was going to be. When we go, but I always like to say, like, this is a relationship that I've had for a very long time. And you may not see people and speak to people for years, but when you do, like, there's always that. Yeah, there's always that.
Like you have never been apart before.
Exactly.
How do you feel he's different now in his maturity than he was as a fresh, new, struggling artist?
I think for him, he's accomplished so much and he's looking ahead, and he's always been light years ahead of everyone, so he's looking ahead, and people may not realize how far ahead he is in his thinking. So they don't necessarily see, the same things, and they might look at that and say, well, that's crazy what he's trying to do. But it's really having vision to see certain things. So I've been supportive of that as well.
Yeah. Well,
so there's so many artists also that, I've just been able to work with on different projects, especially, when you're writing about people. I was writing about people 20 years ago. Some of those people I'm working with on sets, and that's been great. When I did, even doing Growing Up Hip Hop LA, working with cast that I may have been working with their parents.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's an interesting dynamic, like Tretch from Naughty by Nature, right? Like his daughter is on the show, right? Him and Pep, right? And so like I was writing about them back then, and now I'm working with their kids on a television show. So it's interesting.
Very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. Who did you write about at the source? Who was your most memorable story about that really impressed or inspired you?
Well, there's so many.
In addition to Kanye.
Yeah, right. Like, because I just remember the cover we did. It was way early. I want to say it was the first cover, or one of the first covers that he had done. I do want to say that. I'm like thinking about it. Like, did he do another cover before he did the source? I want to say we gave him his first cover, but there were so many, people that I worked with. There were so many artists. I just like to name one off the top of my head. I'm like, I don't know, who do we work with? I think that there were a lot of stories back then that I personally was invested in. Like I remember writing about Foxy Brown, and that was a very, I think, delicate time for her. And we did an incredible cover at the source. And I wrote that. I was really, there was a lot of time put into that, and it was a relationship that grew out of that as well. So that was an interesting time for me as a writer to be invested in these stories, and then that investment extend past my time at the source.
You're watching The Traffic Jam.
We want to thank you for doing what you do for everybody, for representing women the way that you have in an industry that it is down and dirty and nasty sometimes. And and you shine a positive light on it. So we wish only the best for you going forward. We thank you for spending time with us at Traffic Jam, and God bless you.
Thank you.
This is The Traffic Jam.